Life is full of big moments of change and transformation where we have to pivot on our path.
Those moments come with a wide variety of emotions, from fear and anxiety to joy and relief.
I'm Kelly Koopmans.
And I'm Mary Nam, and this is Hard Turn.
Kelly, it's good to see you.
Well, hello, Mary.
You're clearly overdressed,
I
am underdressed. Can we just acknowledge this? Okay.
I mean, it's football season. Should we go with that?
I
mean, usually I feel like I'm the one who's
I
rocking
wear
wrinkles
to try and class it up a little.
You're so fancy,
working?
Mary.
I'm really, I don't know if excited is the right word, but I'm looking forward to today's discussion
Yes.
with Beth Hartsoch.
Yeah, she has some really practical things. I think that if anyone has ever experienced a loss, or if you're just a person who wants to have your life in order in case anything were to ever happen, what I love about this story is that she talks about the planning ahead of time and how it was so helpful in the case of an emergency.
And I just want to bring up the fact that, grief plays into all this. And she listened to our episode last season where you talked about Michael's illness and his passing and what it was like for you. You have that in common. You both lost your husbands. She's approaching this from a very, I don't want to say, is it practical? Is that the word I'm looking for?
I think practical. I think when you're talking about
Preparedness.
getting orders put together, the practical works.
People don't want to talk about grief for many reasons, understandable reasons, but she is just diving in for, I believe, all the right reasons. And it's a really important conversation.
Yeah, so let's get to it. All right, Beth, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the podcast studio.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's so nice to have you here. And I think this topic, clearly it resonates with me, but I think if people really think about their own lives, the people they love and the people who love them, there's a lot of really helpful stuff in here from your story. So I'm just really excited to dig into it here.
For people who are not familiar, can you tell us what happened to Jake, the story?
Yeah. Jake was a person who felt most alive out in the wilderness. And so the emergency that happened was he went out in the wilderness to scramble up this mountain that he'd been up many times before. In fact, it's his favorite, the North Twin Sister in the Sisters Range in the North Cascades. And he left in the morning, and he actually rode his bike from home to the trailhead. It might be like 30 miles or something like that. And then his plan was to scramble to the summit and then scramble back and ride his bike home. And he didn't come home when he was supposed to. There's a lot to this story, but it turned out that in the end that we found out that he fell. He fell on the way up the mountain, actually. But he didn't come home when I thought he was supposed to come home. And so then I needed to figure out what to do next.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where this came in, that you guys had this plan that you said was really helpful in kind of sorting through, finding out where he was and what had happened. Can you take us through what preparedness you had done ahead of time that you feel like helped you?
Yeah, absolutely. A long time ago, when my kids were small, Jake would go out in the mountains sometimes, and I have this vivid memory of it being 10 p.m. and Jake not being home, and I didn't actually know exactly where he was or if this was unexpected delay, and I also didn't know what I should do about it. And I had 2 small kids, and I also had this sort of insecure feeling about, if I call 911 and then he just walks in the door, then I'm going to have activated this whole system for nothing, and then I'm going to feel silly. And it was a really stressful situation because I felt like I was having to invent things on the spot. And he walked in the door, and I was mad. And I said, if you're going to do this, I am never going to tell you that you can't get out in the wilderness. This is clearly what makes you feel alive in the world. And I want that for you, right? This is a way I'm going to love you, is by supporting this. But I can't be here inventing an emergency response plan with our kids sleeping. You have to tell me what I should do and when I should do it. so that I'm just implementing a plan, right? And so it ended up being fairly simple. So after that, we agreed that every time he went out, when he left, he was going to send me a text message and he was going to tell me where he was going and a route, and then what time he expected to be home, what time I should call for emergency response, and then who I should call. And that was such a great gift because that meant all I had to do was look at this text message, and if he's not home at that time, I just do what I'm supposed to do. There's no stress involved. There's no decision making. All the decisions are made in advance.
And how did that help you? When was the moment where you were like, he's not home?
Yeah.
Is it time that I'm putting this plan into place? And how did you follow that?
Yeah. So he said that, so the text in the morning that he died said, headed to the North Twin, back 4-ish. So it only had half that information he was supposed to have. But I already knew at this point the who. I already knew that. And so 4, he wasn't home at 4. It was my dad's birthday party. That's my dad's birthday. So we're at my sister's house at like 6 o'clock. And I'm like, it was a little nagging at that point, especially because normally he would text me when it got back into cell service. So even if he wasn't home, I would have gotten a text. So at 7, I call Ingmar Prokop, which is a close friend of Jake, climbing partner, skiing partner, and one of the emergency response people. And I just used him as a thought partner. I was like, this is what's going on. Jake hasn't come home. I'm thinking maybe I'll just drive out there to the trailhead. I am imagining that his bike is broken and he's out of cell service. And so I'm just going to find him walking on the side of the road. Do you think this sounds like a good plan? And Ingmar, he's so great. He has small kids like you, Kelly. His kids are like 4 and 1 or something like that. And somehow he made space in his schedule and he's like, I'm coming with you. So when we got all the way to the point where you can't drive anymore and we hadn't seen Jake, we used the inReach to text Peter and say, will you call 911? So now this is a search and rescue response, right? And the way this trail works, there's a point at which you can drive and then you can actually ride a bike about 1.5 miles further than that. So this was an interesting moment of decision-making because we had a really inaccurate perception of what official search and rescue response was going to be like. So Ingmar and I are standing there. We have activated search and rescue, and we're trying to decide what to do next. We're not prepared to go all the way in. We just don't have enough supplies. Right. It's dark. We don't have it now. It's like, okay, maybe Jake's got a broken leg or something like that. And so we're going to need some kind of like a first aid kit. We're going to need, supplies to keep him comfortable until help gets here. So I remember Ingmar saying, well, search and rescue will be here in an hour or 2. And we talked about it and I was like, I think we should jog in the 1.5 miles and see if we can find his bike. Because this was my big contribution to this search and rescue team, this little ragtag search and rescue team we built, was that I knew Jake. So I knew the decisions he would make. And I was like, Jake is not going to walk if he can ride. He will ride until he can no longer ride. And then he's just going to ditch that bike in the easiest possible place. And sure enough, we jogged in there and we found his bike. And I wanted to do that because I thought the whole time, an emergency does not feel like an emergency when it's happening. So the whole time I'm looking at my phone, like, did I miss a text from him? Did he text me and say, like, he's at the IGA because his bike is broken? Did I miss him along the way? Right? The whole time I'm thinking, this can't really be happening. So I said to Ingmar, like, if we can find his bike, then we will know definitively, is he on the mountain or not on the mountain, right? If we find his bike, then we know he's out there. It just really narrows down the area we have to look. So sure enough, we found his bike. So at that point, we text Peter again, and then we decide we are going to go out to cell service and talk with Peter and make plans for the next steps. We're thinking at this point that we're going to talk with search and rescue and then coordinate with them. Peter hands off 911 duty to his wife, Juliana, and drives up and meets us. And he has, like, backcountry gear. He's got really strong headlamps. He's got sleeping bags, sleeping pads. He's got gear that we could like actually keep Jake warm if we needed to, and ourselves. So we have all this stuff together, and we're kind of standing in the parking lot like, okay, should we call 911 again? Have we heard from them? Have we heard from them? We're expecting a call back from the search and rescue deputy on duty. And at some point, I'm like, Jake's out there. You have this sort of Twilight Zone moment where you're just like, we need to go. Like, we need to go.
Get the stuff to him.
Yes, exactly. Yes. We're just kind of talking about what to do, and we can't wait anymore for them. So that's what we did. We went up to the trailhead and we started hiking in.
What time is this now?
I want to say it was midnight.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we start hiking in, and the whole time we're like looking to see search and rescue behind us. We're looking down to see them coming, down in the valley. And we get up, you're hiking on a ridge, and it gets to the point where I am slowing the team down, and I'm also just uncomfortable with the exposure. I'm not really a climber. So I was in this nice high spot on this ridge. We were above the tree line, and so you could really see far. So I was like, I am going to stop here, and I'm going to watch for search and rescue, and I'm going to keep an eye on you guys moving up the mountain. And they kept going. It was clear he hadn't seen any sign of Jake, so he starts coming back down. And this whole time we're watching for search and rescue.
Right.
So he gets down at like daybreak. And Ingmar and I have been snuggled up in these sleeping bags, just waiting. And at that point, Peter had cell service at that moment, and he was able to call 911 again. And there was a new search and rescue deputy on duty. They had switched shifts. And this deputy called him back. And after that, things happened pretty fast. By like 9 a.m., a Border Patrol helicopter came. And it was a spectacularly beautiful night. I haven't seen that many stars in a really long time. And then the morning was beautiful. There was like banks of clouds rolling over the ridges, and it was like clear, and the sun was coming up, and the helicopter is coming out of the clouds. And so the helicopter came, and it was clear they were looking. There was fog around the backside of the peak, and they only were there for maybe 10 minutes, and then they started to fly away. And I could kind of overhear Peter and Ingmar talking. I think maybe they were trying to not let me hear, but I remember them saying, well, either they thought they couldn't go back around in the fog, or the news is bad.
Yeah.
And it was 5 minutes later, they sent us a text message, and Peter gets the text message, and it says something like, we found him, and he did not survive the fall. And so Peter shared that with me, and happily then took the phone back, because shortly after that, he received photos from the helicopter, which I do have and I have seen, but I wasn't ready for at the moment. So
What is that moment for you? What is it? Before you described a twilight zone, I think other people sometimes have been like a numbness or almost like a hyper awareness. What was it for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's disbelief, right? I feel like it almost went back and forth between denial, like really, really strong feeling of no, I reject this outcome, right?
Right. I did not choose this.
This is not what it was supposed to be happening, right? This is not the outcome that is happening in this situation. And then just pretty quickly, I started processing, who do I need to call? There were people who knew that he was missing. So I had called his sister. I had actually, my younger son had been at the party when I left, at my dad's birthday party when I left to go and look for him. And then obviously I didn't come back, right? My older son I had contacted at some point to see if he had Find My iPhone on Jake's iPhone. So, then both of them kind of knew something was up, and Jake's sister. And so at that point, so to answer your question, kind of all of the things in rotation as we hike out, because then we had to hike out. So there were a few people that we had called when we couldn't get search and rescue. We started brainstorming. So maybe it was I think first, as soon as Peter got back, we were like, why haven't we heard from search and rescue? How else can we reach search and rescue? Right. Who do we know who might have connections? So we start calling people, and so there were a few people who started hiking in. And in fact, one of them arrived just when we got the text message from the Border Patrol helicopter. And then we start hiking out, and now we are encountering people who are hiking in.
Yeah. Right.
Which sounds like it would have been awful, but actually for me was a good thing, because these are people who love Jake and know him. And now, we're sharing the news, but also having more people to process that shock with, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's lots more to that story, but...
Yeah. And then you write this essay. I think that, I read through it today, and I found it very helpful of these things that you can think of in advance. So you mentioned the 4 points that you want to do in a text ahead of time. You also included other things about the importance of organizing documents. And I think people listening to this would love to know some advice from your experience of what are some of the biggest things that you would want anyone to do, whether it's an adventurer or just an adult.
Yeah.
To have organized ahead of time, no matter who they are or what they have going on.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think my new perspective on all of this, I mean, these documents are things that we hear as adults, that you need. But my new perspective on this is that this is how I love my people. These documents are a form of love. Like, I am relieving them of really unpleasant work, right, if something happens. So I think just healthcare documents like advance directive and, healthcare power of attorney, and relieving your people of having to make a decision on your behalf if you're incapacitated, right? That's a lot. That's a burden. That is a lot of responsibility. And if they have a document where you say how you want it to be done, or I say how I want it to be done, I feel like that would be a big relief. So, and then financial planning. One thing that I did not know is that if you have investment accounts and they have designated beneficiaries, those things pay right away. Nobody looks at your will. I thought your will would govern all of this, and that is not at all the case. Not at all. So you can set it up this way. Now that I am, widowed, I have it set up so my designated beneficiary is a testamentary trust that is formed in my will. But if one of Jake's accounts had 25% going to each of our kids, so my 19-year-old just got money. And I was not planning to give my 19-year-old money. I don't think Jake was either, right? I think that this was 15 years ago when he got a job, and he was just like not really thinking it through. So know that if you die, your designated beneficiaries, the accounts are just going to pay. That's happening before anyone looks at your will. So be aware of that. And then certainly a will if you have, assets and dependents, and you want more structure around how those things are going to be distributed, that it does protect your people from, they have something to go to the court with and say, this is what they said, here it is, I'm going to submit it to the court.
This is so interesting to talk to you about this because, especially coming from someone who was a self-proclaimed systems person, a thinker, an analyzer, the most practical kind of thing, when you make plans, all of the things that you're talking about, life insurance, all of the paperwork, right? Whether you want to believe it or not, we all know when we create those things, if we create those things, it's with a certain picture in mind. It's when my kid is 40 and I'm 87 and I'm so old and this is the right time. You don't think right now.
Yeah.
Jake being gone right now and everything going to the kids right now. Was it easy for you to think about this in terms of now? Did you struggle with ideas of, this is morbid, I don't want to think about it. I don't know how I'm going to feel later when I'm, ill or I'm in the hospital. I think that I ask you this because I think that's what a lot of people struggle with is I myself don't want to think about it. You know?
Yeah, you
It's
mean
too
like in
painful.
advance.
It's too hard. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, none of us wants to think that something bad is going to happen to ourselves or people that we love, right? I guess my point is like, we're grown-ups.
Mm-hmm.
We have to do the work. This is the way we love our people.
We're also human.
Yeah, things happen. And it is hard, right? It's hard. You have to work through that whole like coming to terms with your own mortality. Yes, you do have to do that. And through doing that and being prepared, then your people feel loved. I mean, I think one thing I heard you talk about, Kelly, in the episode about your husband was what a privilege it was to be with him when he died. I cannot imagine if we didn't have a good emergency plan and I didn't know what to do, or I was just handing this responsibility off to others. It was so, I can imagine feeling just helplessness that night, like unknown what's going on. I don't know. And as it was, I got to be there. I got to do everything I possibly could. Like, I am confident that I loved Jake the best I could until the very last minute. And that is a gift, right? What do you not want to have after someone dies? Resentment, regret, things that are unsaid. I don't have those things. And that is a gift, right? So I feel like I loved Jake well, and he set me up for that. And I feel because he mostly, not entirely, but I mean, there's no like perfect solution here, right? But he mostly had his financial life and his life insurance and his all those things mostly in order. I feel well loved by him in the aftermath of his death. So, yeah, I mean, it's hard, but we have to do hard things.
When you repeat the part about how, this is how you love someone, I think that is what really hooks me is it's not about, just responsibility. It's not about just because you are a grown-up, dang it, think like a grown-up. Grown-ups have to do hard things. It's the moment when you said you wanted to create the emergency plan with your husband because that's how you love him. That's how you can love him because he loves what he does, his passion, the wilderness, and you want to support him. This is how you love him, and this is how you can show love to your loved ones, children, relatives, people closest to you by doing these difficult tasks. And I think if you describe it in that way, it's incredibly moving. And also it makes it motivating. It makes it easier to do because yes, that is an act of love. It truly is an act of love.
Yeah, I think we often think about love as a feeling. And I don't know, I mean, at this point in my life, I'm much more interested in love as a verb. And, often it is the very practical, boring things that end up feeling like love to people.
Mm-hmm. How do you relate to him and the relationship that you had with him? Do you feel like that love continues? Do you ever talk to him or do you do things for him? What are some of the ways that you foster your connection with him, though he physically is not here?
Okay, so I think I have sort of two answers for that. So the first one is that Jake was the person in our relationship who, he loved being in the wilderness and he loved bringing others into the wilderness, and especially me. He loved it when I would go do things with him. And so I got to sort of ride along a lot, right? He would do all the preparation. He would do all the risk assessment, risk mitigation, and I just got to go on the Bluebird skiing day. And so after he died, I thought, I still want to go in the wilderness, right? But I am going to have to be competent now. Like, I can't rely on him anymore, but I still want to go. I don't want to do all the stuff he did, right? I never will, but I want to not be a liability when I go out with my friends and we do these things. So in February, I took an avalanche safety course, and then I just last week took a wilderness first responder course, and I feel often very appreciative of the work he did around this. And now I'm trying to prepare myself for continuing to sort of live this way to a lesser extent than he did. So that's one way I feel like I connect with him, or I think about his contribution to our life together. But then another is just really focused on our kids. I think when someone dies, there's just, it's never the same to two different people. But, when your husband died, your kids were really small. My husband died, my kids were really pretty old, right? And so they got to have their dad for like their entire childhood, which is fantastic. But my 15-year-old had his first job this summer, and he went for the training, and I came to pick him up. He worked for the Bellingham Bells baseball club, which was great. He sold hot dogs. So I went to pick him up from training, and he's walking out, and now he's got his Bells t-shirt on and his name tag. And that was the moment, and I was like, Jake would be so proud, right? And so Nolan gets in the car, and I was like, can you imagine how excited Dad would be? He would be like unable to contain himself. He'd be like, oh my gosh, Nolan, you're, this, and you can just hear his voice in that moment. So, and like see how he would be doing it. And so moments like that, when I try to, connect with my kids, because I think that's a big thing for me is like my kids, their dad was a big part of their entire life, fairly long for kids' life. And now he's gone. And how do we keep those stories?
I'll throw it in anecdotally that I had the exact same experience, except it was when my daughter put on her T-ball uniform for the first time. She put on her Mud Hens T-ball uniform and hat like in March or something. And I was like, oh,
yeah,
Dad would think that's so cool right now. And she loved that. She loved hearing, like, does Dad think I'm cool?
Yeah. I know.
So same.
And of course, my kids are teenagers, so they never are going to let on that what I said about Dad being proud affected them. They'll be like, roll their eyes.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and some of those lessons in there. And I know I can be thinking in the future when I go on some of these adventures of where I'm going and what time I'm coming back and who I'm contacting and what was the other one? I missed one in between.
Yeah. So when to call for emergency response.
And when to call for emergency
when
response.
that moment comes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because, I might expect to be back at 4, but you probably shouldn't call 911 until 8 or something like that, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Beth.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
So important.
Well, big thank you to Beth.
Yes.
For sharing her story and Jake's story. I really appreciate that we can come out with some practical things that we can do.
Yeah.
And I think anyone, if you're traveling or here in the Pacific Northwest, you go on a hike, it is a very good thing to think of. Where are you going? When will you be back? Who are you with and when to call for an emergency and who to call? All of us can remember those 4 simple things if we go somewhere to help our loved ones out. If there were ever an emergency, even if it's just an injury or roadside something you need help with.
And I know at first pass, if you don't do this kind of thing, you might think, oh my gosh, this is so overkill, right? But I love how she said, and I just have to repeat it, this is an act of love. We're creating this plan because I love you, because you love to do this thing. And also, can we just say, you don't have to be a climber to have something like this in place, right? Because that's the whole point of her experience, is that this can happen to anyone.
Yeah. And sometimes, thinking about a worst case scenario is hard to do. And you spoke to that. Yeah, it's hard. But I think from speaking from some of my experience too, sometimes if there are things that are not done, it just gets exponentially harder because you don't have someone else to consult or just wonder if you're doing, the right thing. So I love that, an act of love. I also want to give a shout out to Ingmar.
Yes.
Ingmar, who was her helper.
Yep.
And there are helpers in all these types of emergencies who show up and back that person. And it sounds so helpful for Beth to be able to know that she could rally her troops and be there for Jake in the absolute earliest and best way that she could. And I'm so glad that she has peace of feeling like, oh no, I was able to be one of the first people up there looking for him.
Well, and she's describing, right, climbing in the middle of the night in the darkness and just imagining this. It's like, what friendship, what loyalty, what love. And also, if she didn't have that plan, she wouldn't have known that there are people, more than one, who would be willing to climb out there in the middle of the night for Jake. And it's because she had that plan that she knew that they were going to be right there when she needed them the most.
Right. I also think it's interesting that she remembers some of the intricacies of the moment, of realizing the weight of the moment, of realizing the color of the sky and the shape of the clouds. I know that, like, I have the exact same thing. I have this vision of driving across one of the floating bridges, and it was one of the most spectacular sunsets that I've ever seen. And, you know, it's just kind of like in those pivotal moments of life. It doesn't have to be specifically the death of a spouse. It can be anything. But when that vision is so ingrained in your mind and you can just picture it like that, it just resonated with me as something that I've experienced.
Well, and honestly, Kelly, just watching you talk to her and you guys looking at each other, having shared such a painful loss.
One day apart.
1 day apart.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right before Michael died is when Jake.
Yeah. He had his accident, she said, on September 8th, and Michael passed on September 9th. It's just, you know, interesting lessons and conversations with someone who's going through a same timeline as you, but still we're all different people with different experiences.
Processing it in a different way. And yes, that's,
I think it's the beauty of community and the beauty of planning are a lot of the things that really stand up for me in that conversation. And loving that she felt like she could be there. She could be there and support him the best possible way.
Absolutely. And then being so quick to turn around and saying, hey, this is important. This was important for us. This should be important for you. Please consider it. Get it done.
Yeah.
So strong.
Yeah. You'll thank yourself later and other people will thank you.
I learned a lot. I thought I'm also a planner type. Yeah. I thought I was. And then I listened to someone like Beth and it's like, oh, no, I got to double check that.
Double check the beneficiary.
That did not work how I thought it would work, or I thought it was going to work. So, yes, I would personally like to thank Beth for that.
Also, I thought it was interesting I would also think call search and rescue immediately and maybe that it just happens.
Yeah.
But, of course, clearly these are, I think search and rescue is mostly volunteers.
Right.
Who,
a lot of them
and so that takes time for that to happen. It's not just something you call up and they swoop in, you know, within an hour. So I thought that was also interesting just to kind of get a glimpse of how the mountaineering and rescue, search and rescue world works.
We talk about it a lot in the news.
Yes, we do.
And then this is a firsthand look. I mean, just hearing from Beth how it works, that was really fascinating.
Yeah, I thought so too. So thank you, Beth.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary. It's good chatting with you.
Kelly. I will put in more effort next time.
I know. I was just going to say, can you class it up a bit? I promise I will dress down a little more next week. This is a little too formal. I didn't have time.
You know what it was?
What was it? Making up for...
No, I think it was that one episode we showed up in stripes. And so we're like, different opposite directions. Never again.
Till next week.
Thanks for watching.
See ya.